We're back here with Alice for our next and final mini podcast. I know, I wish we could have you here for days. You know, we should have thought about it earlier. Why are we doing it like on your last night here?
We're having too much fun.
Okay, no more details. It's okay.
Yes.
Now everybody thinks we're talking about sex and stuff and we're talking about food. But
Yes.
and I'm like, I'm going to say it's about food and now nobody's going to believe me. Anyway, we're not going to talk about food. I remember you telling me earlier on and I was very surprised about all the things you have read. And the most important is that you are pretty much the only female ever that when I said that women are resources, you were like, yes, of course. And you were the resources that the men, among the resources that men were fighting upon for.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then you breached the subject of polygamy. Mm-hmm. And I remember you telling me like that guys pursue polygamy because that's what they're designed for. But
Well, I mean, so I'm sure there's a often quoted study about polygamy, while it's not being in the Western society a socially acceptable practice. When you analyze the genetics of people in the Western society, you see actually it's a lot more prevalent than we think.
yes,
Both among the men and among the women. I mean, polygamy has developed for a number of reasons: to diversify your gene pool, to maximize the chance that your genes will get passed down, etc., etc., etc. We're not going to talk about evolution and reasons here, but about maybe what people would find acceptable up to a certain point in their relationship in terms of.
however, what people find acceptable really changes like on a decade per decade basis. Some of the stuff that's happening now, for example, in China or in Japan, would be not just unacceptable, unthinkable 25 years ago. It would be like a revolution. And so we're talking about the social construct. Polygamy is pretty much programmed inside males. And I remember you telling me that if you have a relationship or if you're married, for example, to a really cool alpha male and you're very happy, you're not going to mind if he has sex on the side.
It's not that a female would necessarily not mind that her husband has sex on the side, is that I think she would consider all the other factors for which a relationship, especially marriage, exists. It is a very recent construct to think that marriage is an institution of love. Throughout the human history, it was never about love. It was never about sex. Marriage was always about 2 or 3 things. One is solidifying economic status in the society, keeping the status of the family on a certain level. 2, it was a very good environment for raising children. And the third one you brought up was it's a matter of social control.
Yes.
And maybe it's not an overt one, but for sure it's something that I see as more and more dominating our economy, for example.
You told me about yourself that you start having some trouble at work if you don't get married soon.
Right. A married person has mortgage to pay, they have probably children on the way, they have to think about college education for the children, they cannot be free agents, they cannot get up and leave and move to another country tomorrow. They have all these ties to community. They have a lot more strings attached to them through which they are controlled.
Right.
And that provides benefit to the society. So going back to polygamy, because it was mainly a construct of economics, having a relationship outside marriage was allowed for a man as long as he kept his family intact.
Right.
Versus female, like you said, there comes a risk of the husband raising somebody else's offspring.
Because basically,
Right.
when there's a marriage, the woman buys the husband's resources and his support and his protection, while the guy buys the woman's sexuality and solo access to her sexually, so as to make sure that only his kids are raised. And actually, this is something that comes from it's not just from us, it happens to other apes as well. Like when there is a new mate, very often he will kill all the offspring of the previous mate. Because she wants to make sure that all the resources that are being brought to the family unit, within quotes, are being given to his own offspring.
Right. You dedicate your resources to propagating your own genes,
Right,
as opposed
precisely.
to other people's genes. Yes.
Basically, you would not divorce a guy because he cheated on you, if everything else was perfect. But it wouldn't be cheating. It wouldn't be cheating, right?
So we're talking about a situation where both parties understand the importance of family and marriage.
Yes.
So let's say we both understand how important family it is, even if there is no love, which of course is ideal, even if there's no great sex, which of course is ideal to have marriage with love and sex. In that case, you will learn, going back to our podcast number 2, you'll learn how to satisfy your needs with not necessarily the same person, through other means. However, you will also take care not to
Disrupt the family unit?
Disrupt the family unit. So you do it in a way that is not throwing things into your spouse's face.
Of course.
You would do it in a way that is still shows that you deeply care and your family is number one. And this is something you do because you have biological urges. In that case, I think it's easier to make that case. I mean, let's say that comes to light and an affair or fling, is exposed. It's easier to make the case that you're still a family person. And it's easier for the spouse that's cheated to work through this and to move on. And to say, okay, well, I could divorce this person, but we have common property, we have a status in the community, we have children, we want to make sure that we do the best job we can with children. And yes, in that case, people would be more likely to accept infidelity. And in fact, I see it even in the Western society, even in the United States, I see it a lot.
Right.
I see it every day, and it's common knowledge, and spouses accept it just as cost of having access to a highly desirable alpha male, but who is also a great husband and great father, but not necessarily loyal.
You can say the word. He's a great provider.
Provider, yes, provider. Sorry, yeah, I was
All
going to say
right.
that.
Thank you very much for helping us out. We'll talk again soon.